Okay, I'm sitting there waiting. How long we been live?
30 seconds.
Oh, well, hello everybody. We're tickled to have you here. And if you're not here, you've missed out on a blessing on some food, because we had a smorgasbord of things back there, and it was good. Tell the folks back there. Hey, y'all tell the folks back there they did good grub. Chicken in the pan, cornbread, maybe, pinto beans and red-eyed gravy. It was all good. We're just tickled to death. Glad you're here with us at Renew Recovery Community. We're here every Monday night. You'll be blessed tonight. As tonight, Harold is going to come and he's going to give a testimony here in just a little bit. But first, my brother Daryl and Chris are here tonight, and they're going to come up and start us off with a song. So you guys come on.
Chris and Daryl. That's right.
Yeah, you can't forget the other brother Harold.
That's right. Brother Daryl.
It's a blessing as always to be here. This one, I just kind of got thrown on me here the last couple of days, so please forgive me if it don't sound the greatest. But
well, they're gonna sing loud anyway. So y'all
exactly,
stand up.
maybe not even be heard.
Yeah. So Martha Hemphill was my 6th grade English teacher. Okay. And for the first 6 weeks of school, I thought she was gonna beat me to death. Trying to tell me that ain't a word. Okay. Well, ain't's a word, and ain't's in the song. We're gonna say it a bunch tonight, all right? So it's called Ain't Nobody. Y'all stand and sing with us.
I got a story too good to hide. I was a blind man wandering till I saw the light. Yeah, I got a story I can't deny. I'm a living, breathing miracle, and I just want to testify. Ain't nobody love me like Jesus. Ain't nobody love me like God. Ain't nobody love me like Jesus. I know, nobody could. Tell me who could give me this freedom. Tell me who could give me this far. Ain't nobody love me like Jesus. I know, nobody could. Ain't nobody. I'm anointed to bring the news. Everything you did for me, I knew you for you. You gave me joy for the morning, for the ashes and crown. I'm a walking, talking miracle, and I just gotta let it out. Ain't nobody love me like Jesus. Ain't nobody love me this good. Ain't nobody love me like Jesus. And I know nobody could. I tell you who could give me this freedom. Tell me who could give me this far. Ain't nobody gonna love me like Jesus. I know, nobody could. Ain't nobody could pull me from the darkness, save me by the blood, raise me from the ashes. I know, nobody could break off every shackle, tear down every wall, set free every captive. I know, nobody could. Ain't nobody. Ain't nobody love me like Jesus. Ain't nobody love me this good. Ain't nobody love me like Jesus. I know, nobody could. Tell me who could give me this freedom. Tell me who could give me this far. Ain't nobody love me like Jesus. I know, nobody could. Ain't nobody. I know, nobody could. Ain't nobody. I know nobody could.
Good evening. Good evening. Great to be here. I'm a lone lost soul from the way south of Florida. Came up here a few years ago and moved in and found a nice place to worship. And I like to worship. I got one thing, I got to qualify something. I'm a genuine redneck, okay? I was born in Atlanta. My people were tobacco farmers from North Carolina. I got a picture of me and Dale Earnhardt together, and I got a pistol at home. So I qualify.
Absolutely.
Okay? I'm here.
3 for Dale.
He was a good man. He was a holy man, too. You know, I like to read a little bit of history. You know, alcoholism's been around a long time. I use a scripture a lot of times when I speak, and it's in Proverbs, and it's 23, and it starts at verse 29, and it says, "Who has woe, who has sorrow, who has contention, and who has complaints? Who has wounds without cause, who has redness in the eyes, those who linger long over wine, those who go in search of mixed wine. Do not look at the wine when it's red, it sparkles in the cup and swirls around smoothly, as at last it bites like a serpent, stings like a viper. Your eyes will see strange things, and your heart will utter perverse things. Yes, you will be like one who lies down in the midst of a sea, or like one who lies at the top of a mast, saying, They have struck me, but I was not hurt. They have beaten me, but I did not feel it. When I awake, I wake seeking another drink." That's how many thousands of years ago that this alcoholism thing that we talk about every week has been an issue. We're going into some other scriptures. Ephesians 5:18 and 19, I have it on the board. It says, "Do not be drunk with wine, in which it is a disassociation, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melodies in the heart to the Lord. Give thanks always for all things, that the Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, is submitted to another in the fear of God." I don't know how many, through the years, I've been around recovery for some years, how many different scriptures it relates to wine. And in my big Bible that I read every morning, when I finish that Psalms, I always say put drugs, I've never had enough interest to seek the history of what kind of drugs were in the past years, but I know now, we're killing off kids. I lost my grandson 5 years ago. On July 5th of whatever year that was, 5 years ago. I have a habit of going to Dixie Crossroads Strip House in Titusville, Florida for my birthday. We usually travel in the summertime. I was there the next morning. I got this phone call from my grandson's wife and said, Adam's gone. And I just thought they broke up or whatever, and it came to the fact that, he had passed away. These people out here are selling this stuff. They don't care about nobody's life, and they're killing off our kids. That fentanyl is coming from everywhere. And I don't want to get it. I promised myself I would not chase rabbits tonight. So I'll shoot the rabbit and keep going. I came in, I come out of a domestic violence, alcoholic home, and I'm not here to talk bad about my parents. My parents loved me the best they could. They both died as Christians, and then my pop settled everything before he passed on. At 9 years old, we moved to Florida. We were going to the local Baptist church, and when we got to Florida, we went to the beach on Sunday. And I'm not going to make a long 30-some years of a story out of it, but we went to the beach, 9-year-old. Who wants to go to church? You can go to the beach, right? And I was raised up, like I said, in an alcoholic domestic violence home. A lot of stuff went on, a lot of crazy, insanity. I left home probably 16, 17, got married real young. I'm going to say one thing about it. Everything my grandpa told me came true, if you know what I mean. Don't mess with that woman, she's trouble. Put your money in the bank and don't spend it all. All of those things my grandpa taught me, Grandpa Parnell, who was a tobacco farmer. So, but I lived out all of those things. I picked up a drink at probably 17, 18 years old. I got in the system. There's a system out there. If you're an alcoholic, you got a DUI, and then you got a driver's license without driver's license. All of that stuff happens, and you can live in it. Some people die in it. But at some point, I made the choice of calling Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was funny. I told a lady at the intergroup office in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that I had a buddy of mine that had a drinking problem because she told me what to do for him. And she asked me, when did I have my last drink? So that was the way I was introduced into that deal. Now, all I ever knew about alcoholics was all painters are alcoholics. Because most bars would have an old Ford station wagon with ladders on the top and, paint running down. Hey, that's yours. And that's all I knew. So I called the intergroup. They sent 2 guys out to me. One guy was an old boot camp drill instructor. They were driving a brand new Tornado, so they couldn't have been painters. And the guy in the back seat was an executive for Hertz Corporation. And he was all mad because they took his Learjet away from him, And I swore to myself that I ever got out of that car, I'd never go to another AA meeting the rest I lived, as long as I live. And they come and got me the next night, and we did this thing for about 3 days, and I decided I could make it on my own. I didn't understand anything about spirituality, other than when I was a kid, around 9 years old, they told me that Santa Claus wasn't real, and I'd heard a little bit about Jesus, because I wasn't that big, And I just figured out, well, they told a lie about that, then hey, this one must be too. So I didn't seek it out. I occasionally, if I got in enough trouble, I might go to church, and get some pastor to write me a letter because I was going back to court again, and that kind of stuff just went on and on. I stayed sober 4 months the first time I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went to a AA barbecue, and the chicken wasn't done, and the people weren't nice, and it went on. This thing that sits on my shoulders but keeps me in a lot of trouble. But I said, I left there and went to see one of my buddies, and I was going to go get him to start going to meetings with me when we were all going to get sober and be great, be grateful. And I went there, and make a long story short, somebody passed me a drink, and I ended up relapsing. And the next morning, I had got myself in a situation that I probably could have went to jail for a long time. It wasn't a crime. I didn't hurt anybody. I actually woke up out of a blackout with a pistol in my hand, all the bullets shot at it. Scared the heck out of me. So I stayed sober out of desperation. I could start seeing God, though. I could see things. I didn't know what it was all about, but I had a daughter that I had never taken care of when I was doing my drinking, and I went to an AA meeting and came back to buy the AA club, and there was a phone number there for me to call, and I called that number, and it was Bonnie. Bonnie Sue was my daughter. And I hadn't seen her in I don't know how many years. Her mother left, I won't get into all of it, but her mother had left town and all that. And I started being able to see her. I got a chance to go to Fort Myers, Florida to see her the first time. This is a funny story, but the guy a friend of mine that I had met in AA, I actually got him out of the detox. He was a car salesman for a Porsche Audi dealer. And he didn't have a driver's license, and nobody was looking. I was driving a new Porsche. And I drove from Fort Lauderdale to Fort Myers, pulled up in the front yard of this house where my daughter was living. And one of the biggest times in my life that my heart fell, there was about 4 little blonde-haired girls there, and I didn't know which one was mine. And you talk about God starting it. He was whispering in my ear, and it would be real strong, you know, and it would, you know, it'd be getting stronger and stronger. And then I said, I don't want no part of that. And my daughter lived with me. I took custody of her when she was 13 and 18. She left, and, you know, I won't get into her life. But I was watching the news one night, and a guy, a preacher, by the name of Jim Holbrook, who became one of my best friends along the way, he had a little commercial and said, if you want to talk about spiritual things, come and see me, and I'll buy you a Coca-Cola or a cup of coffee. And, you know, that was another sign that, you know, God was moving me, but he was moving me slow. And I could see that something was going to happen here. So I didn't go see him. I went in his church on a Sunday night, because all the hypocrites went on Sunday morning. So I went on Sunday night. And there was a pretty good crowd there. Jim, you know, in fact, I was looking at it the other day. I got the first sermon that I ever had from him, and one of the first things he said in the first sermon that I listened to said that the devil has come to visit us tonight. Now, you think that was a little freaky, you know? I mean, I knew it had to be me, because you know, all the rest of these people saved, and, you know, they're doing all their Christian stuff. But I kept going, and I went on Sunday night. I came on Sunday night, and there was a gentleman from Laurinburg, North Carolina, which is about that far from Wilmington. He was a retired Army chaplain. He had come there to open a counseling center, and I went to see him. God was drawing me. Now, if he would have been from New Jersey, I would have never went to see that man. But this man was from Laurinburg, North Carolina, about 40 miles from Wilmington. So that was drawing me to go see him, and I went to see him. And all he did was he laid a Bible in the lap. And he told me to read John 1:12. And that was a pretty simple one. I'll read it out of the Bible myself. It says, he came to his own, and his own did not receive him. He was talking about the Jewish people at that time. Then it says, as many as received him gave the right to become a child of God, even to those who believed in his name. And Gene asked me if I wanted to be a child of God, and I said, yes, sir, and I did the prayer. And, you know, it's amazing. You know, I'd like to do a teaching on what happens when you get saved, because I had no idea what it was about. I didn't. I was a 9-year-old that knew about Adam and Eve and the boat and those little stories they teach in Sunday school when you're a little kid. That's all I knew. And the time that I said that, and by the time I got into my vehicle to go back to work, there was something already happened. Willie Nelson didn't sound that good no more. The other stuff that I listened to didn't sound that. And I'm not here to tell everybody not to listen to country music or none of that stuff. I'm just saying what happened to me was something started changing. That quick it started changing. And got involved in the church. I had been going to that church for a while, and I got a call from the chaplain of the Fort Myers or Lee County Jail. And Jerry called me, and Jerry said, I hear you're looking for a place to serve the Lord, you know. And I spent probably, I'm guessing, off and on, maybe 25 to 30 years in that jail. And I got my heart moved a lot. I dedicated to what God had called me to do. And the guy that led me to the Lord is sick right now. He just was having surgery. He just had surgery this last Thursday. I don't want to move into that story yet first. So I went into the jails. God moved me. I was in the auto parts business. I'm not auto parts. I ended up in the big truck business, big stuff. And I was parts manager for the big dealer there in Fort Myers. And I had done it for a while, making pretty good money, you know, some years ago. And I woke up one morning and the Lord told me it was time to go. And I was making good money. I had a company truck. I was being treated pretty well. I went to the detox because I've been volunteering over the detox for a while. And I went to the detox, and I seen Frank Cook was was the director, and I asked him if I could get a job as a counselor. And he said, no. What do you know about counseling? And I'm thinking, well, I don't know, I've been sober for, 15 years, whatever it was at the time. And he says, I'll give you a job at the detox. I said, okay, I'll take it. I didn't have no idea what I was going to make, didn't have no idea what was going to happen. But I was a nurse's assistant. I cleaned up the puke and give them baths, the guys baths, and I did the blood pressures and those kind of things. That's what I did. And I'd been working for, I don't know, a couple of weeks, and I thought it was about time for a pay. And I went in and asked for my check, and they said, well, we only pay once a month. Now, I mean, I'm just getting into a new marriage, and I'm making, I couldn't believe it when he told me what I was making. And I said, well, how much do I make? And he says, we make $5.15 an hour, and we give you $3 a shift extra for being on the night shift. And I started off in that business, and it was tough. My first night there with a nurse, I went in, and there was a guy named Cindy laying in bed, went right into convulsions, and I about ran out the back door. I mean, it was that's how I got broke into. But not, move on a little bit. The other bad news I forgot to tell you is I'm used to talking for an hour and a half, because when I'm in the jail, they lock me in that room for an hour and a half. So if I get too far, throw something bad. I can't even get a smile out of you. So I started off in that profession, and God led me here and led me there. Every time I could make a step, I made a step. And I say today that I have 85% followed God's will in my profession. Okay? I went there. I ended up in Salvation Army. I set up a drug and alcohol program for them. I stayed there a couple of years. I'm a good starter. I like to start stuff. So I moved from that into drug court for the next county over. The judge had me in for drug court. And I was there for a while. I had a lot of probation people that I had in charge of or trying to encourage. And one night a guy came up to me. He was a Seminole tribal member, and he came up to me and he says, why don't you go work for the tribe? And I said, well, I knew who the tribe was. I'd been out there before. They had AA meetings out there, and I'd gone out there. But I called, I gave them a phone number. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a brand new office and a $10,000 raise. So God was really speaking then, because my wife and I were, she's a teacher. My wife just retired after 41 years as an elementary school teacher. The blessings just kept coming. I can't get into everything, but that moment that man laid that Bible in my lap made the biggest change in my life that ever happened, including my wife. I'm gonna cry a little bit, because Gene's such a friend. He's not only a person. I hadn't seen him in years, and I knew he had moved to Florida, and I hadn't heard from him and talked to him. I think it was 4 weeks ago, maybe on a Saturday. My wife I don't do Facebook. I think that's the most awful thing in the world, is to type all my time trying to figure out if somebody liked the food they got at the restaurant. So I don't do Facebook. But my wife does, and she's got all these teacher friends that she communicates with. Some lady, I don't know who she was. I don't know how she ever knew my wife, but she sent my wife a note that Dr. Gene Snelling wanted to talk to me. And I've been looking for it for 5 years, or more probably. And sent him the number. He called me a little bit later that evening, and his wife had just died. Sally died, I don't know, it's got to be 4 or 5 weeks ago. And he wanted to know if I could be there. And my wife was friends with his wife, because she was a teacher too. So I went up there, and it was a sorrowful day, because of Sally losing her life. She had a couple of heart attacks and died. But it was just to be able to hug him again, because it meant a lot to me. About 3 months ago, I started in my prayer life, I started asking the Lord to reveal to me how many people had had something to do with my walk with the Lord. And when I got done, there was over 100 people in there. And I called almost all of them. The ones that were still alive, I got one pastor that I kind of felt I did him wrong anyway. Anybody here ever gossip besides me? Well, I did, and I felt bad about it. It come to my spirit not too long ago, and I haven't been able to get a hold of Tom. But Tom Sexton is probably one of the best soul-winning Christians I've ever seen. He started off with nothing. He's got these buildings don't mean a cotton picking thing to me. They really don't. But he has been able to plant enough fruit that his church has grown in a great way. My spiritual grandpa, his name was Mickey Evans. Mickey founded one of the greatest drug and alcohol treatment centers that I've ever heard of or seen. I used to go from my house in Fort Myers out to Okeechobee just to go to Sunday school there. And we've sat around and had missionaries there. And when they left that room after an hour and a half or 2 hours, they had enough to go back to their mission field and be comfortable. I mean, one Sunday we raised enough money to get a lady in a new van, to do her ministry down in South America to take people to the hospital. I've sat in the truck with Mickey and some other guys and prayed about buildings for staff, and go back 4 months later and 4 buildings be sitting there. My wife gets after me all the time because I'm not here to criticize nobody or anything, but I need to see what God is doing. I did Experiencing God in prison. If anybody here ever done Experiencing God? Yeah, I did that in prison twice. And it says go where God's at work. And I went to Dunklin many, many times. We had a conference probably every 3 months with all the people that are Christian recovery programs in the state of Florida, and we got together at Dunklin, and we praised the Lord all day. Had a little old lady there that had some music, and I don't have any more Miss Mary's music, but I always told her when I walked in the room and she was sitting there, I said, "You ain't gonna make me cry this time, woman." About the time she get to singing, I'm crying. I've been blessed so many times and so much that, my wife and I have been together 35 years. For me, that's a miracle. Because I had some girlfriends, maybe 35 days at times. Had an awful time in relationships before I found the Lord. And I've been blessed. There's not a little kid that comes around that don't hug my wife. We've had to watch the Super Bowl because one of her first graders was playing in the Super Bowl. He's had professional football players from Tampa Bay that was in her class, that's been to her class with autographed footballs for all the kids. And the one, I can't remember those names, the one told the kids when he got through with football, he was coming back to Fort Myers and he was going to be a teacher and a coach. And he was a coach and a teacher at Fort Myers High School. When you see God doing stuff, it's a whole lot better when you go somewhere and you don't see it. If you know what I mean, I'm not, forgive me, Lord, I have said some things I shouldn't have said about church, but today I don't speak that. I just know that I've been blessed. My last church, and we were talking about it over there, how much time I got? Okay. I got an hour? Okay. Yeah, it's like where I went to church in Fort Myers and where I was led to Christ under McGregor Baptist Church, and Pastor Holbrook and I got to be friends because we were NASCAR nuts. And one of the best blessings I ever had in my life is when I had some connections at one time. One of my buddies was a NASCAR official, and I had him meet me at Daytona, and I got him in the garage. They told him that if he tried to start a deacon's meeting, he was going to have to leave. And it's just, I got a hold of M.O. Langley, who was a pace car driver at the time, and I got him a ride in the pace car. And I was as proud as I'd ever been. But the man I love that much. And I had breakfast with him about 2 years ago. He's 90 years old now. Lost his wife not too long ago. And he lives in a retirement home and all. And one of my buddies know him pretty well, and I talked to him and said he's got a girlfriend now. 90 years, you know. So, you know, the blessings were many. They're still coming. I've got issues in my life. I am not walking on no water. I ain't jumping out of the boat and see if I ain't going to jump out of my boat and see if I can do that. I just know that my life is 85% better than it was on that day, July the 10th of 1983, when he opened that Bible and said, "Ain't no that." I had some other scriptures. I've kind of left. It's amazing. Like you sit there for hours and you pray and you write down stuff, and then when you come and do it, it's like completely different. But that's okay. I feel that God has blessed me. He blessed my family. Lost my grandson. Another loss just Saturday a week ago. One of my sponsees from Florida. His wife sent my wife a note. In fact, he was my best man, and she stood up for us. And they, you know, when we got married, his 42-year-old son had been found dead up in Pennsylvania, where he moved to from drug and alcohol. My 56-year-old brother died 4 months ago from alcoholism. They say it's in mental institution, penal institution, not live a normal standard of life, and it's still happening. Still true. You know, when I lost my grandson, Adam, he was a decorated Army veteran. He'd been to Iraq twice. And he went to college when he got out. They got him a job over at Mercedes in Alabama. He was one of the lead guys on the robots that makes the cars nowadays. And I mean, he was making great money, bought a house. He had all of those things. You know, he wasn't a street bum that was shooting dope or that kind of stuff. You know, he had a pretty, you know, nice wife. I got a little grandson that turned 6 on Friday that don't have a daddy anymore. And every time I look at that grave and that little boy hugging his gravestone at the Veterans Hospital Memorial over in Bushnell, Florida, you know. The hardest part I had to do that, the family asked me to do a service. And I did it, and it was very hard. It was very hard, because he was my fishing buddy. You know, I had talked to him 2 weeks before, because we were leaving for our trip, and was coming to Alabama to go fishing with him. I got that phone call before I ever got there. My heart still broke. And it's tough some days. Military pictures hanging in my office. I miss him. I missed him a lot. His wife and my little great-grandson was here with my other granddaughter and great-granddad came, and we went over to Crossville and camped out, and they were here to visit us. And it was such a blessing to see the little guy, you know. Stuff's tough, you know. I was talking to a mission guy for a Baptist mission guy here not too long ago, and I asked him the question, why aren't the churches going to these families? Why aren't you going? Why aren't you bringing them food? Why don't you do their funeral for them? You know, these kids are dying, man. Dying. I mean, it's like I don't think there's a night of the week that you don't turn the news on, you know. And the other part, because I'm going into this. This is one of my leftover resentments, okay? About 1.5 years ago, my wife is a jogger. She runs 3 times a week, 4 sometimes. She had ran around the neighborhood. We had a little neighbor. We lived in the country for a while until they come and build all them cotton-picking houses. She came back to the house and said the feds are out there. They're holding women there. 2 women lived in that place. And they found, I don't know how many pounds or ounces or whatever, thousands of dollars in guns stolen and all that kind of criminal activity in our neighborhood. And we lived in a nice neighborhood. And they took them downtown And by 9 o'clock the next morning, they were at their house. That broke my heart. That they're selling that fentanyl. That fentanyl is coming from a crime, you know. People don't wake up. A lot of these countries are peddling this stuff but care less how many they kill.
Right.
It's sad, but anyway. I got to end with my prayer. This is my little morning prayer. It says, Dear God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not have sight of the seashore ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I actually doing it. But I believe this. I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. I hope I have the desire for in everything I do. I hope I never do anything apart from your desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me to sandy shore, though I may know nothing about it at the time. Therefore, I will trust you always, for though I am seen to be drifting lost at a sea without a rudder, in the moment of important decision, I will not be afraid to take action, because I know you will never leave me to face the future all alone, but my prayers will guide me to accept your holy will. I got one other thing I need to do, and I don't know. I'm just going to show one of these. You might have seen this, but this means a lot to me. This is my Jesus. He's holding me up. Every day he holds me up. And the days that I go in that living room and turn that stupid television on and I don't go in that prayer room in my house, he has to hold me up the rest of the day. And he has. Now I will show you the other one. I'll hold that up for later. You guys ready to pick?
Yep.
Picking and green? Thank you. God bless. It's my bookmarkers. Oh, there's all kinds of notes there. Thank you.
Well, this song has been perfect to end with. This is our brother talked about alcoholism. When something is over you, that's your king. Whether it be alcohol, drugs, pornography, the hatred that you have for someone else. When you allow those things to come into you, they become your king. And for you to find joy, you have to find the King of peace, the King of joy. When you replace all the hatred, the hurt, the habits, and the hang-ups with something that will give you peace, then you're finding something that you can truly say, that's a king worth having. That's a king that I need. So I pray that this song can lead you to find Jesus to this day. That it could allow you to let him to be the king of your heart. So if y'all would, please stand and just sing along with us. You are good, good, oh. You are good, good, oh. Let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fount that I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good, oh. 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 Let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the wind. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, He is my song. You are good, good. Oh, 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 you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. 'Cause you're never gonna let me down. You are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh,
Sing that out.
yes, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fount that I drink from. Oh, He is my song.
I want to thank Harold again for your, speaking to us tonight. That was I appreciate your honesty and your candor, and you saw a lot of things in this world. A lot of things, a lot of hurt, a lot of triumph, a lot of everything. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Thank you, Chris, for being here singing with us tonight. Brandon and Hannah were supposed to be here tonight. The whole Humphrey family have all got COVID. They're okay. They're just dealing with it, but it's kind of stair-stepping now. The little girl Sadie got it, and now the boy and the mom have got it, and eventually Brandon will get it, and hopefully they'll all be out of quarantine time for VBS over at Knox Creek Baptist Church starting next week, which is where we'll be for a couple nights. But I do appreciate Roger, all the folks that cooked tonight. You folks that are watching online, do go like and share our page. Do invite somebody. In fact, if you're watching at home tonight and you're not in Podunk, North Carolina, come back next week. Roger will be finishing up next week the Are You a Codependent? And then the 31st, which is the 5th Monday of July, Brandon and Hannah should be back with Katie Wilson. Yep, I don't know if everybody knows this. Katie's pregnant.
Yeah.
I found this out last night at church, but she's pregnant, so they should be with us back that week, and so we'll see you on the 31st. Again, y'all be back with us every Monday night. We're here 6 o'clock for meal, 6:30 for this meeting. We have small groups afterwards. Thank y'all. God bless, and we'll see you soon.